Hi everyone, welcome to Bodrum.
Subscribe now.
The Marina is probably the most central and popular spot in Bodrum. It is also known to be one of the most prestigious marinas of the Asian and Mediterranean coasts. You'll find many yachts and boats docked here, as well as tour boats. The Marina is the best starting point to explore the old town, and it is surrounded by many shops, restaurants and boutique hotels. You'll also find the historic Bodrum Castle as you walk along the coast to the end of the marina, and it is the best place to enjoy the sunset each evening.
Like anywhere when you come here to one of the main seaports here in Turkey, so Bodrum, Marmaris, Kaukan, Kaş, Alanya, Antalya, and there's some other ones I'm forgetting. You will always find like an area which is designated for shopping. So this is one of the bazaars. You can find sunglasses here, you can find hats here, find toys for children, you can find swimming gear. You can also find like ice cream, desserts, many things possible. So this is something you may be interested in, and also traditional Turkish authentic items such as carpets and the lights and all of that stuff, and some souvenirs as well. So it's kind of besides the marina, and it's maybe worth checking out when you're here. And it looks quite trendy here. My first impressions is that it's really well developed here. It seems quite modernized. And I can see why they say that Turkish people in particular find this to be like a status symbol if you was to ever buy a home here. So usually, let's say a Turkish person has a home in whatever city, but if they buy like a second home here in Bodrum, it's seen as a status symbol. And I can kind of see why they think this way. And when I speak to a lot of Turkish people, they tell me that Bodrum is their favorite place to come to, a lot of them. And I can see why, because it's quite trendy and really well developed and modernized as well.
Bodrum Windmills are one of the most famous landmarks of the peninsula, and they overlook both Bodrum and Gumbet. The windmills date back to the 18th century and were used to grind flour up until the 1970s. Since then, they have been derelict. However, many tourists still hike up to the top to take pictures besides these historic structures. The views of Bodrum from the top are incredible, so it's definitely worth either doing a 30-minute uphill walk, or alternatively, you can easily take a taxi to the top and then leisurely stroll down, taking in the amazing views. The Bodrum Caravanserai is found near the market section, and is definitely something that I highly recommend because it just looks spectacular, even today after centuries of being in that location. And you can also sit down and have some coffee at the cafe.
I'm right at the top, the very top of this amphitheater, and you can see the sea from a distance. You can also see the Bodrum Castle behind the amphitheater, and it looks majestic, as it should do. So the Bodrum Amphitheater is one of the most significant landmarks over here that you can find in Bodrum. And as most amphitheaters, even this one in Bodrum, it provides you a glimpse into the ancient world, which is always fascinating when you come to a place like this. And this well-preserved structure is one of the most impressive structures that you can find in the whole of the Aegean region. Now, this amphitheater goes back to the 4th century BC. That is when it was initially built. So considering that, taking that into consideration, I do believe that this amphitheater has been well preserved in that context, and in its pinnacle, or in its prime, it was able to hold 13,000 people here at once. And this amphitheater, as you can imagine, it was used for many different types of events, like for theater, for gladiator fights. And the good thing is, when you go right at the top, you can see the entire coast from the top. It looks absolutely wonderful. And you can also get a really good view of the Bodrum Castle as well from the top. So all in all, I think it's worth coming here, even if it's for a few moments, just to get a deep dive into history. And the other cool thing is it's free to enter, so you don't need to pay or have some sort of like membership card or something of that nature. So do check this out.
The Bodrum Museum of Underwater Archaeology can be found within the complex of the Bodrum Castle. This fascinating museum showcases artifacts dating back from 12th century BC to 16th century AD. Most of the artifacts were discovered during underwater excavations from around present-day Turkey. It was incredible to see ceramics, intricate jewelry, and artifacts from ancient shipwrecks.
Welcome to Mesut Sebzeli Döner, and this is one of the top 10 things to do here in Bodrum, because not only do you just get a nice meal, but you get to also sit beside the sea itself. And I know that these sort of things exist, but I haven't really, in the last 2 years, whilst being in Turkey, or ever been in Turkey, been in a restaurant like this, where it's besides the sea. So it's just a nice atmosphere. There's golden hour as well. Okay, so I've got some doner with pilav rice, and it's got some potatoes on top of it. So this is one of the breads that you get. I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna wrap this up like this. Bismillah. Views are perfect. There's some people swimming over here as well. It's like a boundary with which you can swim. Great atmosphere. Luckily, there's not so much loud music as well. It's subtle, which I like. I don't like it too loud. Golden hour as well. The weather is perfect. It's been a really hot day, but the breeze is nice. Cadence is good. So yeah, and the meal is delicious. That's one of the main things. So do come over here. And also, this is one of the restaurants where you get some, it's not exorbitantly priced. Some of the other restaurants we were at were 2 or 3 times more the price of this particular restaurant. So, and they're also in the same location. So you might as well come over here. You get good meals, price really nice, great atmosphere, great experience.
Bodrum Maritime Museum showcases model boats and information on sponge diving, which used to take place in Bodrum. However, the most fascinating part of the museum can be found on the upper floor, which contains a private collection of thousands of different seashells from all over the world.
So this castle was built from the year 1402 onwards by the Knights of St. John as the Castle of St. Peter or Petronium. A transnational effort. So this castle has about 4 towers, an English, a French, a German, and an Italian tower. So bearing the names of each nation that is responsible for its construction. The castle started reconstruction at the back end of the 14th century, only to be taken over by the glorious Ottoman Empire. This was initially a chapel, and then it turned into a Jamia masjid. So let's have a look at this. Look at this. Incredible. Perhaps this is the original structure, which is being shown down there. Deep into history. This is from the Hellenistic times, and it is believed to be around 323 BC. So speaking about many, many centuries ago. So this is the chapel behind me. So when the castle was built, this was the chapel, and it was meant to be the most amazing looking structure in the whole of this castle. But then in the year 1523, the Ottomans took over this castle, and it was taken over during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, or Suleiman I, or Suleiman Kanuni, as he's popularly known amongst the Turkish people. And the castle remained with the Ottomans for 400 years. And Awliya Çelebi writes in his book that this was called the Süleymaniye Jami. And usually a Süleymaniye Jami has like one minaret that you can see up there. So it's a magnificent structure. And they say, when I was inside, it says that this was, when it was a chapel, and when it was before the Ottoman times, this was seen as the best structure in the whole of the castle. And so obviously changes have been made, and it's been there for a while, even before the Knights. So interesting piece of history. So this castle was under the Ottomans for over 400 years. And after World War I, this castle remained empty all the way until 1960s, when the castle became a museum of underwater archaeology. And just recently, in 2016, it was inscribed in the UNESCO tentative list of World Heritage Sites in Turkey. The Mausoleum of Halicarnassus is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The mausoleum was built in the year 352 BC for Mausolos, and the word mausoleum comes from his very name. So this region in Bodrum, back in the 4th century BC, the city was known as Halicarnassus. And Mausolus ruled over here for 24 years, and this was a small part of the kingdom of the Persian Empire at the time. And when Mausolus was about to pass away from this world, he made a plan, and he instructed that a mausoleum should be built, a tomb should be built, which is at that very moment in time in history, that it should be the biggest tomb in terms of height, in terms of size, that there is in the entire world. And that tomb was really grand. It was quite a spectacle when you look at it. And we was looking at some of the models inside, because there's an exhibition where you can go inside over here. And there's also a video that you can view. And there's also actual models that they've designed. And it looks really grand. Like, you can't even imagine that something like this was over here all those thousands of years ago, because the extent to which they built it, it was built of some of the most impressive stones that you can possibly find. And the stones, to give you an idea of how impressive these stones were, when the Knights Templars decided to build Bodrum Castle, which you will see in this video, they used a lot of the stone from over here and they transported it to Bodrum Castle in order to build over there. And also, a lot of the statues that were found over here have been transported to Bodrum Castle. And a lot of the statues have also, interestingly, been transported back to the UK, and more specifically, within the British Museum. Now, this monument stood over here for 17 centuries until a series of earthquakes kept on taking place, and eventually it destroyed a lot of the monuments. The mausoleum was untouched until the city fell to Alexander the Great in the year 334 BC. And I've mentioned this earlier, that Alexander the Great, he is believed to be Zulkarnain, who is one of the 4 people that had full sovereignty of this entire world at one moment in time. Okay, interesting piece of information that we found is that the sister of Mausolus, who was responsible for building and instructing this tomb to be built, his sister, her name was Ada, and she is believed to be the adopted mother of Alexander the Great. And as a result of this, Alexander the Great allowed her to rule over this very region. Now, although the Knights of St. John of Rhodes came over here and they invaded this region and they went to Bodrum Castle, they used the stones and the material over here to build Bodrum Castle. Eventually, the Ottomans tried to capture the castle, and eventually, with the conquest that took place in 1523, under the rule of Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottomans were able to not only take Rhodes Castle, they by default were able to take Bodrum Castle as a result of that victory. Hence, the Ottomans were in this region of Bodrum for 400 plus years as a result of that victory.